My name is Lauren. I was fired under the pretense of protecting my own sister, ironically, without them knowing that I secretly held the entirety of the company they worked for. 3 people orchestrated my dismissal. My sister, my boss, and my then best friend. They smiled as they stripped me of my badge, as if I were trash to be discarded. I remained silent, merely staring at them, holding back a smile, for what they ignored was that they had just fired their true owner. 6 months ago, I was just Lauren, the IT girl who fixed broken printers and received no respect. People often forgot I was in the room. Even when I was the one keeping the company running, my sister Clara joined the company through my influence. I moved heaven and earth, got her hired, and trained her personally. Those were days spent helping her understand the company's processes, assisting her with the systems, and guiding her through every task. But the moment she got close to the CEO's daughter, everything changed. It all started when I mistakenly received an email saying, "We're starting our plan today. She'll never find out." And the sender? It was my sister. Suddenly, I was being excluded from meetings. Emails were accidentally lost. Projects I initiated were transferred to other teams. Then came the final blow, a false complaint filed by Clara, alleging that I had misused company data. The HR manager, whom I later discovered was her college friend, handed me a termination letter with a fake smile. "Lauren, you understand. It's for the good of the company, nothing personal." Not personal. She was my sister and had just cost me everything I had built. Or so they thought, because while they were busy with office politics, I had built something much bigger. 6 years ago, I started a silent venture with a shell corporation, using my tech skills to develop cybersecurity tools. This shell corporation slowly began acquiring shares of this very company. I kept everything hidden behind proxies and company names. No one knew, not even Clara. And just 1 week before they fired me, I signed the final agreement. The Shell Corporation officially owned 72% of their company, but I remained silent. I wanted to see who would stab me first. And she did, behind my back. So, that day, I left like a loser, with everyone watching me and whispering behind my back. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. 3 days after they fired me, they threw a big party at the office, celebrating the new leadership. Clara walked in wearing a $2,000 dress, acting like she owned the place. My ex-best friend Richard was by her side, holding champagne as if he hadn't just stabbed me in the back. They were laughing, toasting, talking about new beginnings. But what they didn't know was that I had already scheduled a mandatory board meeting for that night, under my real name. At precisely 7:01 p.m., all senior executives received an alert. Emergency ownership review, mandatory attendance. Clara was confused. "Why is the board calling a meeting without consulting me?" Richard said, "Maybe it's about your promotion. You're about to be officially named Chief Technology Officer." She smiled. But that smile wouldn't last. The meeting room was silent when I walked in. Clara's jaw dropped. Richard's glass almost slipped from his hand. The CEO, our cousin, narrowed her eyes and asked, "Lauren, what the hell are you doing here?" Calmly, I sat at the head of the table. Then, I slid a file towards the board's lawyer. "These are the ownership documents. You might want to read them aloud." The lawyer looked confused until he flipped through the file. Then, his eyes widened. "This can't be right. This document shows that a holding company called Omnitech now owns the majority of the company's shares." He turned to me and said, "And according to these records, you are the sole owner." The room fell into absolute silence. Clara whispered, "This is a joke, right? She's just the IT girl." I looked at her and said, "Correction. I was the IT girl. Now, I'm the reason your paycheck exists." Everyone was paralyzed. The board members began whispering among themselves. The CEO stood up, furious. "You manipulated us. You went behind our backs." I leaned forward. "No, I played the same game you taught me. You just never thought the loser could beat you at it." Clara's face paled. Richard couldn't stop blinking. The CEO, our cousin, froze as if someone had turned off her brain. I sat there calmly, letting the silence do its damage. Every second that passed was a reminder. They had just handed power to the one person they tried to destroy. One of the board members, Mr. Marcus, cleared his throat. Lauren, are you telling us that you've been acquiring shares behind the scenes all this time? I nodded. 6 years of silence. While you mocked me, ignored me, and sidelined me, I was buying the company one piece at a time. Clara slammed her hand on the table. This is insane. You were just a nobody. You didn't even have the guts to speak in meetings. How could you do all this? I looked directly at her, because I didn't waste time playing office games while you chased titles. I was building an empire. The board's lawyer confirmed everything. All documents were legal, valid, and irreversible. And then I dropped the second bomb on them. I'm not just here to own the company. I'm here to make changes. Effective immediately, the following executives are being removed from their positions for unethical conduct. I slid another folder across the table. Inside were records, emails, transactions, manipulated reports. Clara's name was at the top. She grabbed the folder, flipped through it in a panic, and screamed, "You're doing this because you're jealous, because I moved up." "No," I said, standing up slowly. "I'm doing this because you betrayed me and because you are a liability to this company." Richard interjected, sweating. "Lauren, we're friends. Come on, don't do this." I turned to him, my voice calm but firm. "Friends don't sell each other out for a quick promotion. You could have stayed out of all this dirt. But instead, you joined them." He said nothing more. The board had no choice. My ownership percentage gave me total voting power. Within minutes, I had removed them from their positions. But I wasn't finished. I picked up my briefcase and took out 3 sealed letters. I handed one to Clara, one to Richard, and one to my cousin. "Consider these your final paychecks. Severance included. You are officially out." Clara's voice cracked. "You can't do this. You can't just erase us." I looked her in the eyes. "You fired me to protect yourself. Now, I'm just returning the favor." I left that meeting room with all eyes following me. But as I reached the door, I stopped and said one last thing. "Oh, and that company retreat next month in Kyoto is still happening, just without you." But what they did next changed everything. I thought it was over. I thought firing them would be the end. But I had no idea how far they were willing to go to destroy me. For days later, I started receiving strange calls. No one spoke, just silence on the other end. Then the emails started arriving. Anonymous threats, false lawsuits, ridiculous allegations of corporate fraud. At first, I ignored them, thinking it was just noise. But then someone broke into my apartment. Nothing was stolen, but my laptop was open. Files had been accessed. It was a message. I checked the security footage. Someone had used my old access card, the same one I used when I was just the IT girl. Only 2 people still had access to that card system, Clara and Richard. I knew they were behind it. But what I didn't know was how desperate they had become. I later found out that after I fired them, Clara tried to launch her own tech company using stolen files from our company. But when the investors did a background check, they found the scandal. No one wanted to get involved with her. She was blacklisted. And Richard, he crawled back to a competitor, begging for a job. But somehow, all the companies already knew what he had done. They thought I had leaked the information, but I hadn't said a word. They were falling, crumbling, and they blamed me for everything. But it was all their own doing. Then, they devised a final plan, a plan to take me down completely. It happened at the company's annual shareholder meeting, my first as the majority owner. Everything was perfect. The presentation, the numbers, profits had soared since I took over. But as soon as I took the stage, someone shouted from the back, "Lauren Rogers is a fraud. She stole this company." It was Clara. In the middle of hundreds of shareholders, board members, and press, she approached holding a thick file in her hand. "This," she said, waving the file, "proves that Lauren's holding company used stolen software and fake shell corporations. She doesn't legally own this company." The room went silent. Everyone turned to me. One wrong move and I could lose everything. My reputation, my company, everything I had built. The moderator turned to me and said, "Ms. Rogers, do you have a response?" I walked to the microphone, calm cold. Then I smiled. "Yes," I said. "I was hoping you'd show up today, Clara, because I brought something too." I picked up my briefcase. Inside were call recordings, emails, and bank transfers showing how Clara had bribed a former employee to falsify documents. I let it happen. I let her walk right into the trap because weeks ago I had planted a fake file in the system, labeled Ownership Vulnerability. She took the bait. I played a short audio clip. Her voice was crystal clear. If we leak this, it will ruin her. It doesn't matter if it's real. By the time she proves it's fake, the damage will be done. Gasps of surprise filled the room. The moderator was in shock. A board member whispered, "Oh my God." I turned to Clara and said, "You taught me how to play dirty." I just got better at it. Security escorted her out. The audience applauded, and I looked at them and said, "This company was built on silence, betrayal, and politics. But from today on, it will stand for something better." But just when I thought the game was over, fate intervened and surprised me once again. The next morning, a letter arrived on my desk. A letter I never imagined receiving. It was from someone I hadn't heard from in over 10 years. The envelope had no name, just my office address and a gold embossed seal I hadn't seen in over a decade. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single handwritten note. "We know who really funded Omnitech. You're not the only ghost in this story. Let's meet." L. My heart stopped. There was only one person who signed their name that way. Lucas Peterson, my former partner. The man who had disappeared 12 years ago. He had fled after allegations of corporate misconduct. Lucas was my partner. We started the company together when we were nobodies. Two broke tech nerds working in a warehouse, coding day and night. He was brilliant, incredibly smart and promising. But unstable, greedy. The kind of guy who wanted shortcuts instead of strategy and consistency. He wanted us to sell our code to a foreign investor, one with serious red flags. I refused. Lucas didn't take it well and then started committing several offenses within our company. He leaked code I had patented, forged my signatures. When I found out, I reported him, filed a lawsuit, and he was going to trial. But before the trial happened, he fled. I followed the instructions in the letter. An empty warehouse on the outskirts of the city. When I arrived, he was already there. The same cynical smile. As if he hadn't vanished off the face of the earth. "Long time no see, Lauren," he said, stepping out of the shadows. "You've been gone too long, Lucas," I replied. He let out a short, almost laugh. "But seeing you take over the company all by yourself gave me a reason to come back." Then he took out a USB drive and tossed it in my direction. "What's this?" I asked. "Proof that your entire shell corporation was funded through an account I created, which means legally I own 49% of the company." My stomach churned. That's not possible. Not only is it possible, it's real. And now I want in. Half the profits, half the power, or I leak everything. The board, the media, your investors, everyone. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. I had just taken down my enemies, exposed the betrayal, rebuilt my name from the dust. And now the ghost of my past had returned to claim half of my empire. I looked at him calm. Then I smiled. "You didn't come back for power. You came back because you're broke." His smile vanished. "You wouldn't have waited 12 years if you were doing well. You have nothing. That USB drive is a bluff." He took a step forward, his voice low. "Want to bet?" Then I handed him a folder. "I already knew you were alive. I've been tracking the account you used to fund the company, and I bought it 6 months ago." His eyes widened. "I legally had your name separated from our company when you fled. Or did you think the lawsuits would just disappear because you left? You don't own 49% of anything. You're just a ghost." Security lights flashed. My private legal team entered. Lucas recoiled. "You set me up." "No," I said. "I finished the story you tried to erase." As he was escorted out, I stood there, taking a deep breath. I no longer had family or friends from the old days. But I had peace, and that was priceless. Back in my office, I hung a new picture on the wall that read, "They fired me, but I owned everything they worked for." Below it, I added another line, and when the ghost returned, I buried him too. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's just permanent. Life takes many turns. Sometimes we believe in the friendship of some people, but we end up surprised by painful betrayal. Despite this, The most important thing is to recognize and overcome. Laura knew how to turn things around despite the betrayals. Have you ever been through something similar? Tell us here in the comments, we would love to hear. If you liked this story, please like and share this video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories.